Philosophy is very important. And I think it's also important where it touches on life and a person's concerns, which is why one-on-one tutoring is a good way to approach things. You don't even know what you are most concerned about unless there's a free form structure. You might think, oh, I'll just look at a catalog of courses and pick one. Surely I must be able to figure out what concerns me in about the 5 minutes I took reading each description of a course. But it's more the free form nature of discussions that are that's what's required to get to find out what concerns you the most. I do recommend it as long as someone is primarily interested in exploring ideas.
Nice to see you. How are you doing?
Oh, very well. How are you doing?
Doing well. Okay, so let's launch into it. I was hoping to begin with that you could tell me a little bit about your background research interests and what you were doing before we started working together.
I don't have much of a background in philosophy, but I read a lot, and my interests were, I guess, not much political philosophy. Some Derrida, some. I really liked Rorty. Listen to his lectures on YouTube. And Zizek, even though I never understood much of what he said, but he's has some interesting ideas and is definitely entertaining. My other background is in the Jewish tradition. I studied in an Israeli yeshiva, which for those that don't know is like a madrasa or a seminary. And the one that I studied in was particularly nationalistic, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. There was a very good sense of brotherhood and community, and it was actually very inclusive of many different groups. As a result of nationalism, we were connected to all different Jewish groups, and every third or fourth, I think it was every third Sabbath, Shabbat, we would have a Sephardic, which was a non-European liturgy, you could say in English, I suppose, for Friday night. And on the rest of the day, we'd sing songs that would sound very foreign to other people, but we felt were equally part of our identity. But, we'd sing songs like Bititsi, which sounds extremely foreign to most people, but it felt very natural and good to us to have that song. It's very Arabic sounding.
So as you were studying Zizek, Rorty, Derrida, and these other figures on one hand, and going to the yeshiva on the other, can you say what problems, what questions, what kind of fundamental inquiry were you oriented towards, or were you could say what problem were you trying to solve? What question were you trying to answer? And what, if any, frustrations you experienced in trying to answer those questions or in pursuing those goals?
While I was there, I was extremely focused on learning Hebrew. It's one of the reasons I went to an Israeli program instead of American. I started on an American one. I switched to Israeli one so I could be immersed in the language. And while being immersed in the language, I also thoroughly enjoyed being immersed in the spirit, you could say as well, of religious Zionism. Although in Hebrew, they avoid using the word Zionism. It's actually national religious. It's once I left the yeshiva, I struggled back here in Toronto. And to be honest, I am no longer a believer in historical accuracy of the Bible, or even I don't feel right saying I don't believe in God, but my approach to God is I feel that honestly, being immersed in Western society destroyed a lot of good things that I enjoyed. And for a long time, I tried to figure out a way to fight back against it. So I suppose that's one of the reasons I investigated certain philosophies. Most of my courses were in computer science and math. And I did a double major, but the second major is Middle Eastern studies, and it's a mishmash of courses. So there's very little philosophy. It was history, Arabic, Hebrew, and I did some philosophy courses that I didn't find very beneficial, like studying, honestly, I'm sorry to say, but studying Leo Strauss, or Maimonides.
With all of that going on, how did you find out about Millerman School, and why did you decide to do private tutoring?
Growing up, I did have private tutors, and I connected with some of them, um, mainly in uh, the Jewish tradition. I found it very beneficial, and I haven't had that as an adult much at all. I actually have reached out to people that are doing degrees in philosophy, and they generally aren't interested in tutoring. So it's something I had thought about before doing, and I listened. Oh, here's what I was thinking. I knew that you were working on Dugin and got in trouble at U of T. And I thought, here's someone who I could explore a variety of thoughts with. I didn't think here is a right-wing fanatic. If you were a right-wing fanatic, you never would have got a degree, I think. It's pretty hard. So I figured that here's a person that can consider a variety of viewpoints and would be worthwhile to discuss topics with. And I also liked that your engagement with philosophy is also social, because social matters matter to me. That's why I wanted one-on-one tutoring. I'm actually in classes at U of T that only have 2 students, and sometimes there's only one, I've heard, but it's just not the same. I'm not sure why. There's something more rigid about the university setting, perhaps, or maybe people that I've learned from. But yeah, I wanted to try one-on-one tutoring with you because of the fact that I could direct the topics that were covered and cover some things that were important to me.
How was it for you? What did you find valuable? What did you get out of it?
Well, before I started, fascism was just a word to me, but now I can proudly say blood, honor, family. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, I need to justify my reading. And by engaging with you on some of these topics, I see that this topic is worth dedicating time and effort to understanding. So I have got some of Dugin's books. I always could have read them, but it was nice to discuss with you these topics and see how they're relevant to some of the things I was thinking about, such as the different levels of society that we talked about last time. I now have good reason to dedicate more of my time to reading about this topic because I think that there's something very lacking without a sense of belonging to a people. And this is something that needs to be supported, because if you don't live within a society that has that feeling, you have to understand it and create it even and justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you go with the stream. And I think this is something that would probably benefit a lot of people, but I'm focused on myself. I've always had a problem with both universalism and complete individualism. On the one hand, people that are too universalist just get taken advantage of all the time and don't look out for the people around them who they should look out for. People you care about, friends and family. There should be more of a focus on some level lower than universal. And you helped me to distinguish that there are levels between complete individualism and universalism. Now, I am mostly referencing things we talked about in our last session because it's fresh in my mind. But other than this, we also, I appreciated that you reviewed my thoughts on selfhood and consistency of self and knowledge.
Just so people are clear who are watching this was something that you wrote, that we read together, discussed and commented on together, and you found that to be a helpful exercise.
Yes, for sure. And okay. I wrote it reflecting on topics that I'd covered in the course when I read the Etitus, and was coming up with the idea of, you briefly mentioned in a session before that, how philosophy, a lot of it was about finding out who you are, that is central to knowledge. So I reflected on the matter, and I reflected on Theaetetus, and I wrote a composition based on it, and it was great to have you review it and to hear your comments.
Okay, what would you say to somebody who's thinking about doing private tutoring? I can't have you comment on the courses because we did this format, but if somebody's thinking about taking private tutoring, is there anything you'd say to them about, first of all, whether you recommend it, and secondly, how you think they could get the most value out of it, or what worked for you to get value out of it?
I really like the consistency of having one session per week for 5 weeks. Someone else might consider it worthwhile to spread it apart and have once per month so that there's time to read a book in between. That could be beneficial, but I like the regularity. And from having it in a row, I have accumulated a whole bunch of things to read about and think about. I prefer the intensity of having it once a week. I don't think it would be worthwhile if it was seen as part of working on assignments for school or something. I think this is more important than that. I do recommend it as long as someone is primarily interested in exploring ideas. I think it would seem a waste of time to see it as just tutoring for school. Do you know what I mean? There's no content that you had to convey. That's one of the things that differs it from tutoring. It is learning together.
Okay, Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.